Tony, what are we going to do about Robin Cook?
Newscum.
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 News, scum.
If you're watching this on YouTube, Matt, I'm talking to you, then you should notice, the first thing you should notice is that there's no adverts. Matt, are you there? There he is.
I love having no adverts.
Did you notice that, though, when you were watching this on YouTube before?
Yeah, well, how did you do that? Because are you not monetized on YouTube?
Well, that's what people would think, right? They'd say, well, this is such a small channel. The reason there's no adverts is because it's not monetized. But that's not the case. That's not the case, is it, Matt? I've already told you that. It's not the case. There's actually a surprisingly low threshold to be advertised on YouTube. And this channel, I was going to say but we've achieved it together. And this channel is monetized. I'm choosing not to put adverts on. Because
we love you.
Well, that could be the reason. There's a few reasons. One reason might be, let's speculate. One reason might be that YouTube, although it hates misinformation, as we all know, Matt, YouTube really hates misinformation, except for the fact when they're paid to promote it by what seems to be the Israeli government. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's been quite a few adverts on YouTube that seems to be coming from the Israeli government or some kind of weird organizations that support the Israeli government. The latest one saying that the UN is the one that's stopping aid getting into Gaza.
Oh. No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
your algorithm.
Yeah. I don't know why they're sending it to me.
I don't know why. They must keep hearing things that you say, and I don't know why on earth they'd want to send you nonsensical bullshit Israeli propaganda.
Maybe it's because I watch 2CTV, but I mean, I think it was, before. I don't want to, blame anyone here, but I think it just happened to be before I was watching a Novara Media video that this came up. And I'm sure it's just random. But the thing is, right, and again, I don't want to drop Novara Media in it immediately, but they get, they have advertising on their YouTube, even though they say that they're paid for by donations and membership or whatever. They do put adverts up. And so Novara Media, amongst other things, but definitely Novara Media being one of them, they're actually profiting from the genocidal Israeli government, which is, this channel, that's one of the reasons that maybe this channel isn't doing advertising. Another reason might be that basically this channel would make such a small amount of money if we put the advert thing on. And adverts are incredibly annoying, as you know. That I just think that, like, the few views that we actually get, I don't want to put anybody off. And, like, anyone who might stumble upon this would just have a better viewing experience if there's not, like, broken up. Yeah.
There's another reason.
No, well, these are just possible reasons, but yes.
Another possible reason that you don't want to pay me.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one as well, yeah. Maybe I turn them on when Matt's sleeping. I turn the adverts on and try and max out this channel. And then
calls me every night.
What time are you planning to get up tomorrow and go on YouTube? Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I might turn them on. That's my threat. This is how I've noticed this is how YouTube works. Independent media works. Is you basically threaten your audience. You're like, independent media can only exist because of you. You better give us money or we're going to stop doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And then where would you be, huh?
Exactly.
The Newscum cronies?
Cronies, sycophants?
Sycophants, yeah. Where would you be without your sycophancy?
No, that comes back on us. Where would you be without the sycophanty? Is that what we are? Anyway, what do you want to talk about? Israel, Epstein, why we haven't made a video for 3 weeks? What'll it be, Matt?
All of those sound like horrible topics.
And they're all related.
One of which is Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, it's probably true, actually. Yeah, well, I don't want to go all Rachel Reeves on everybody, but the reason is like, well, I mean, it could well be. And I imagine the reason I have to say this is that this channel is incredibly sporadic and often quite lazy. And so we might have just not made a video for 3 weeks. But that isn't actually the case this time. I've had some personal issues, which I would like to talk about at some point, but maybe not today. And going forward, our pledge to the sycophants, to all you truckers out there, is that we will make a podcast every week. This is a podcast. It's also a YouTube thing. And we will bring one out every week. Isn't that right, Matt?
That's our commitment, yeah.
Yeah, and if that doesn't happen, whose fault is it?
The audiences.
The audience is fine. Yeah, it's not mine. That's the main thing. Even though when we started this, I was like, Matt's quite busy. He's got a family. He's got like a full-time job and stuff. It's going to be difficult for him. I have been the one who has like every time we haven't done one, it's been my fault. Matt has actually been dedicated the whole time, which is very annoying to me. But also, I suppose it's good because it means, I've got no one to blame but myself, and I never blame myself, so I'm quite content. If Matt had been the issue, that it could have got pretty nasty. But anyway, Epstein.
Yes.
You put out an article just, what was it, today, saying that you don't think Epstein killed himself. Is that right?
Well, I don't know if I really said that.
So what did you say?
Well, hang on. You can't interview me.
I'm not interviewing you.
I don't agree with your opinion. Now, what did you say again?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, what was that about? I read it and I was like, what are you saying here? You're not clear, Matt.
I was just saying that I thought that I was on the fence really about whether Epstein killed himself or not. And I just said that you need to have like good evidence not just good evidence for it, but also to be able to explain a scenario of how assassins would have been able to get into a high security environment, into someone's actual jail cell, and then fake their suicide. I'm not saying that's impossible, but I am saying it hasn't been done much before. I mean, I looked. I don't think I actually put it in the Ultimate article, but there was the case of in terms of like high powered figures, there was Barry Seal, who was that CIA informant who ultimately got bumped off by drug dealer, like the cartel, in the late 80s. But even that wasn't like the prison warden saying, "All right, kill him." They just didn't give him very good protection.
Well, this is similar though.
Very unusual. It's definitely similarities, and obviously people do get whacked in jail, but really, you'd have had to have had the connivance of the prison warden. You'd have had to have the connivance of the guards who are on duty. They've had to have the connivance of the camera operators, the assassins themselves, the fucking WhatsApp group that arranged the hit, etc., etc. So I'm just saying, it might have happened, but I personally would like to see someone explain the scenario of how that could have occurred.
I think,
and to provide better evidence for it.
I think it has been explained. There's elements of what you said. Some of your arguments have been explained. The guards are asleep, right? The cameras are off. It was all very suspicious. He was taken off suicide watch.
But presumably they'd still have had to have got in the door, in all of the doors of a major fucking prison. It can't just be. Oh, the guards are asleep, and then what? The assassins like go up to their belt, like a fat slumbering guard, and take the key.
Is that a reference to the Disney Robin Hood film?
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah,
I got that immediately.
Good.
Yeah, well, I mean,
taking us all the way back to 1973
might have inspired the thing, But I think. Okay, the first thing to say is it doesn't really matter.
No,
right?
It doesn't
because
matter that
also
much. I'm just someone who's interested in conspiracies, and so
no, you're not. You hate you poo-poo all you're interested in poo-pooing.
No, you. This is the thing. You've just read the article and thought I was saying one thing, and you were wrong. And I just said I'm interested in conspiracy, and you said
well,
no,
it was
you're
poorly
not.
written.
You don't believe them. That's not. It's just completely misreading. As soon as you hear one thing, you just jump to a conclusion.
No. Because your emphasis.
Fucking hell. They make decisions in about 3.5 seconds. You've just done it in about a quarter of a second.
No,
I've just put out an interesting article, putting out some proposals on the fence.
So now just slipping in the word interesting. And no one's arguing about that, but we could argue about that if you want to. The thing about, right, if he committed suicide, that's also quite suspicious.
It was quite difficult for him to commit suicide.
But why would he even if it was not difficult, even if someone gave him a gun or something, why would he do it? Right? Like this, I feel like on the one hand, there is a lot of suspicious things around his death, right? Which are interesting. And your article was kind of going towards, let's dismiss these interesting things. Or you'll need more evidence to say that he killed himself. And I think you're right. Nobody's saying that they definitely know that he killed himself. But people
you're agreeing with me, but you just don't like me pointing out that we haven't got perfect evidence.
Look, let's move on from... Look, your article's amazing. It's great, okay? And
Thank you, right,
what we can all agree on is that it really, it's generated this great conversation that we're having now. That's the main thing that articles should do, isn't it? And so... absolutely fantastic. Anyway, but the thing is...
generating advertising revenue for Newscum.
Maybe. If people don't join the Patreon, then we'll fucking get those Israeli ads up. So, if he killed himself, or he was murdered, or whatever, it's all very suspicious, right? Not many people kill themselves before they've even gone to trial. And he doesn't... And considering the connections that he seems to have had, and how other trials had panned out for him in the past, he might have had... it would be reasonable to think he might be a bit optimistic about the outcome. I mean, it looked worse than ever for Epstein, for sure. But I don't know. I think,
not necessarily. Ghislaine was sent down for 20 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Around about the same time.
Yeah, I can't remember if he killed himself before or after the Ghislaine news came through. I don't know. But imagine running in those circles. I mean, what is he going to believe? Where does he find out about any of this stuff? I mean, if you were actually Jeffrey Epstein and you read in the newspaper that Ghislaine Maxwell had gone down for 20 years, I don't know, would you believe it? I mean, people that follow the Jeffrey Epstein story don't even believe... Some people believe that she's not even in prison now.
Yeah, where is she?
Well, where's Jeffrey Epstein? Because the first thing you've got to establish is that he's dead, or even ever existed. See, the problem with your article is there's too many assumptions. First, you assume there is a man called Jeffrey Epstein and that he died. And I was like, God, the naivety of this article. Yeah. Unbelievable. Anyway, say again.
That's why you wanted to discuss this article that I've put out.
I just want to help you out. But in future, you've got to prove that there is a United States of America, and you've got to go way back.
Yeah, and a map won't cut it. If I showed
have you ever?
If I showed you Jeffrey Epstein's severed head on,
have you ever been to the United States?
Exactly. Yeah, you'd be like, well, you're not an expert in Jeffrey Epstein's severed head because you didn't own the head.
You haven't been.
Yeah, but at least I've got the head. You haven't been in the head.
But I think the main thing so Jeffrey Epstein's interesting. Obviously, everybody's fascinated by Jeffrey Epstein now. And what's really great about it is that you can't even really argue about it without conceding all sorts of insane kind of things that are happening, right? Because just the very fact, the very existence of him leads you to start, you're immediately talking about the CIA, Iran-Contra, Mossad, the Israeli lobby, all kind of things that, there's loads of evidence that these things exist and that they do certain things at certain times, but they're just never reported on generally, right? Like the Israeli lobby in its various forms in the UK and the US and around the world. Like these organizations, these structures exist, and you can find their websites and you can find the money and you can find individuals that are involved, but they're never really commented on as having any kind of political leverage or whatever, in the way that, right, when Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party, there'll be endless stories about local momentum groups and what they were doing in their local constituency to overthrow British democracy and turf out their MPs, and how this was a threat to civil liberties and everything, right? It's just constant coverage. You never see any coverage about this stuff. So the problem with Jeffrey Epstein is that immediately the sort of stuff that should be covered all the time has to come to the fore in some way. And you might argue, someone like you, I could see it, you might argue, well, Jeffrey Epstein, in a way, discredits, like there could be like a real investigation into these organizations, but instead it goes into sort of QAnon murky world of pedophilia and honeypots and stuff. And I'd say, go on.
I was going to say, I think so. Here's a comparable, or here's an interesting case related. So the Trilateral Commission in the 1970s said that there is now an excess of democracy. This is because of all the protest movements in '68. There's an excess of democracy, and we need to address that. And the way to address that is through education. So basically, we need to clamp down on education and get more control over education. Now, I think that's exactly what you're talking to there, because I mean, I've always thought that sounds like, oh my God, they're going to have a really big effect on education. But it could just be that a bunch of twats who are powerful but actually don't have much control over education or any control of education have said, well, we really should sort out the blooming education system in this country. So which is it? I guess it's more likely to be the former, because they're able to pull certain levers of government and whisper in certain ears and write policy papers and whatever. But I don't think it necessarily follows just because one organization says a bunch of fucking regressive, horrible things that's necessarily going to translate into policy. I'll give you actually one example that I know that's really clear from a couple of colleagues who wrote a paper on it in detail. In the aftermath of of 9/11, there was a series of meetings between Hollywood executives and the Bush administration, specifically Karl Rove. And it was like the producer of fucking MacGyver and the Die Hard series and all this. And they basically said, look, get in there and make loads of make films about terrorism, and make sure you don't do any propaganda, of course, but and basically spread the message. My colleagues Roger Stahl and Tricia Jenkins, both professors in the United States, wrote a detailed piece about this a couple of years ago, just saying, yeah, obviously this was a bad thing that was happening, and they were trying to get them to do shitty things in the movies, in the scripts, but actually it didn't really have a great deal of effect, because the people that went to those meetings, they wanted to be sort of like, oh yes, of course we want to help in the aftermath of 9/11, but they fucking hated the Bush administration, so they just didn't really do anything that they were told to do.
Yeah.
So there are all these kind of ambiguities about the way that works, and I guess that's why I say I'm interested in conspiracies. I've spent years of my life poured into that, but I do sort of I kind of want people who are doing that to. I'm expecting them, hoping that they'll go a little bit further than just sort of saying, oh, well, someone said this, or that looks weird that he died like that. And you kind of need to dig a bit deeper, and both forensically, but also institutionally.
Yes, but I suppose the problem is that the information isn't out there, right? So, you take, and I think this is, it's so hard to know where to even begin with this stuff, right? So with Epstein, I mean, maybe this is like so naive, because I've been watching lots of stuff about Epstein and nobody's asking these questions. But that's, I suppose, what this channel is. We're this channel that's so naive that we ask the stupid questions that no one else dares to be stupid enough to ask. But okay, so tracking back from right now, who is leaking the birthday letter stuff to the Wall Street Post?
Yeah.
I have no idea, right? Why was Jeffrey Epstein on trial in 2019, and why was he on trial originally in the early noughties, right? Because there's this idea that he is protected, and yet at the same time he is constantly being prosecuted and persecuted, and it's like, I mean, and that makes sense insofar as it's not a total system. It's not all controlled by one entity, right? You have elements of the deep state, elements of the Trump administration, elements of the Democratic Party who want to see the Epstein stuff come out, and you have elements of it that don't, right? And Epstein's kind of caught in the middle of that. Mm-hmm. But none of that is even ever talked about. So it's just like very, very hard to gauge. So all you have is like, you have this guy called Epstein that you somehow, that name has come out, and we've sort of, and then stuff about him has come out, and that links to other individuals, some of which are famous politicians who, apart from that link to Epstein, are squeaky clean. So it's very surprising. But, you sort of have the tenuous link to the sort of bigger web of stuff that's going on. And there are other people, I mean, someone, if you follow conspiracy theories at all, then you know, like, there are certain other names, and a lot of them are linked to Epstein, like Adnan Khashoggi, the Turkish arms dealer.
Yeah.
And he was one of Epstein's clients in the 80s. That's not surprising. And there was also like the weird thing of like Trump bought his yacht after he died. He was an arms dealer, and he was one of the, some would, he's one of this class of people like Putin, where they think, oh, actually, he was actually the richest person in the world, the real richest person at one point. The way that people say that about Putin. He certainly was very rich, and he bought this luxury yacht, and he died, and Trump bought it. But it's like these kind of weird connections, because there are these sort of people. He was also heavily involved in Iran-Contra, and so there are these things that come out like Iran-Contra, like Jeffrey Epstein, and surprise, surprise, they're kind of linked with other people, because there is a lot of stuff that's going on that is just not reported. And even when it kind of comes out, you wonder how any of it comes out. And then why is the Wall Street Journal not really, really investigating this? Why are they just putting out these, if you read the Wall Street Journal, you will get these new leaks about the birthday letters, but you won't get told about how Jeffrey Epstein worked with Les Wexner, and how Les Wexner is linked to the Puff Daddy parties. And you won't get this like large, they won't talk about that. And why won't they? So why are they publishing stuff to damage Donald Trump, but not publishing stuff to show the wider kind of problem with,
Well, it might well be that Rupert Murdoch owns the Wall Street Journal.
He does.
And that he's now in a legal fight to the tune of $10 billion, which of course will never happen, but in a legal fight with Donald Trump. So when you get divisions among the elites, they'll use whatever they can as a way of having a fight. Whereas Les Wexner, the billionaire who, for whatever reason, ended up giving Jeffrey Epstein his mansion in New York, and entered into some kind of financial relationship. It doesn't really suit anyone's interest to hear about that. So I think that's probably what it is. The information is weaponized for political reasons through the press, particularly when you've got a
But
very
this is the problem, right? And I suppose this is what I meant to say earlier is like, so, I was asking you, why is Epstein getting away with things sometimes and then not getting away with things other times? And I think like the obvious reason is because there is a fight within the sort of organizations that he's working for, right? Yeah. With different individuals. But that itself is never explained in the media. So the whole thing is sort of inexplicable.
Yeah. So you're sort of saying that the media never really reflects upon itself about the
part that it plays, that it clearly.
Yeah. That's really important, isn't it?
I mean, that's the thing. Anybody
you're a history book, basically.
Yeah, but you look at if people. I'm not a conspiracy expert, but I just watch a few podcasts and stuff, and you just learn immediately about things like limited hangouts, right? And the way that the CIA plays with the media and gives information. We've only got 10 minutes left. By the way, to anyone who's just tuning into this podcast, we use free Zoom meetings that last 40 minutes, and that's.
Have you been trying expensive Zoom?
Oh yeah, don't try expensive Zoom. You don't need $1 million to make podcasts, right? You can make it on free Zooms. And one good thing about there's two good things about that, right? One is that it's free, obviously, and the 40-minute thing kind of gives you like a halfway or like a bit of structure, so we can kind of because we don't really start straight away because Matt's always faffing about with the microphone, and then we get into it, and then we do sort of a 20-minute bit, then or whatever we've done. Then we stop, we got a little break, and then we come back, we do a tight 40 minutes, and then we're out of there because we just cut off, so you don't have to deal with anything. So that's one. Another good thing is every episode you can talk about, You can fill the time by talking about the convoluted way in which you make the podcast, and that just takes loads of time and effort, and you don't have to plan or do anything. Isn't that right, Matt?
Yeah, that's right, Dan. And what else is on the agenda for today? Or are we?
Is that it? Is that the end of fuck?
I thought you told me that you wanted to talk about Peter Mandelson's link.
Yeah, I did want to. Well, you mentioned Trilateral Commission. So Trilateral Commission is a brilliant example of that. Trilateral Commission is a completely open, transparent organization. I'm not even joking. You go on Twitter and you can watch all of their meetings. They live stream them. The trick is that they're like 3 to 4 hours long and they're incredibly boring. So, by hour 3...
2 hours through the 2 hours through the last one, they say, worship Satan.
Yeah. They're watching the viewing figures at 4 to 0.
As soon as it goes to 0, they're like...
Right now! Yeah, but the thing is, it doesn't matter about what their public meetings and stuff. The point is that it's a place that people can sort of meet other like-minded individuals in some kind of dating scenario. And the people that are involved are really interesting. So you were saying, well, they might just want to try and, lobby the education departments to sort of try and, whatever you were saying before, right? Something harmless like that, right? But the problem is that the people involved are the people in government. So, the wild thing about the Trilateral Commission is that you have, at various points, because people are only members for very brief periods, but you have Jeffrey Epstein, up top, was a member of the Trilateral Commission, apparently, according to Wikipedia, among other sources. It has been put in other sources, but apparently it's very hard to know because he's been deleted from whatever the fuck files they keep, which they probably don't keep very good files. Other members include, of course, most famously, Keir Starmer, when he was a Labour MP under Jeremy Corbyn, I believe. Other people include Peter Mandelson, who we will talk about after the break. And your friend...
Oh, and there's a doorbell, which is the perfect time for a break.
It's not, though, because the break... We've still got 6 minutes of this 10-minute bit. Anyway, so, as I was saying, and Matt won't like this, but the other person... I just noticed you're not wearing your headphones. We're going to have to start the whole thing again, Matt.
Yeah. Actually, they've disappeared.
Not professional. The other person, Matt, get ready for this, Rory Stewart.
He was in the Trilateral Commission. Yeah. Why would I not like that?
Because you love Rory Stewart and you love the rest is politics. That's your level. That's what you operate.
I was just watching it.
I heard you.
Alistair Campbell was just talking about meeting Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And Rory Stewart was in
fucking surprise. So you've got the rest is politics, the most popular. Look, it's not my kind of politics, but they are extremely boring people who probably could give good insights, but deliberately don't. I find they're very boring, sort of analysis of what's going on, right? But one of them, Rory Stewart, member of the Trilateral Commission, also linked to Le Cercle, the CIA backed organization that's sort of against communism and what else does it do? Basically, just sort of trying to fuck with democracies in Europe. He's linked to MI6, isn't he? He was suspiciously in Afghanistan at some point or whatever. He's got a very weird life. And then the other guy is Alistair Campbell, dodgy dossier. Neck deep in Iraq war, dead babies and shit. Just really absolutely disgusting that he's still a public figure after everything that's come out. The Iraq war, you want to talk about conspiracies and the suspicious deaths around that. in the lead up to that. I mean, we could talk about that. We'll do a crime of Keir Starmer thing on it. Blame Starmer somehow tenuously at some point. But anyway, that podcast is just unbelievable. And so it's the most popular podcast on politics. It's all right, but like, I mean, I'm not saying this podcast is as good, but like,
A couple of old
how many hundreds of thousands of people listen to that podcast a week? I mean, could we get like just a fraction of the fucking... Oh, I'd turn the adverts on for that. Oh, I would. Anyway, we got 3 minutes, 38 seconds. We'll talk about Peter Mandelson after this. But anyway, so Trilateral Commission is a classic example of all of these people being connected in an organization that is never spoken about in the mainstream media. Seen as not being particularly important, which is fine, but then why the fuck do all these incredibly busy, important people join it all the time? And why the fuck would Jeffrey Epstein be? Like, what is his role in that? So yeah, we'll talk after the thing about Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson and their relationship, but also obviously Jeffrey Epstein and Israel and what's going on in with the Israeli reporting right now, because I didn't really look at the news for a bit, and then the last time I sort of about a week or two ago, I hadn't looked at the news for a week, and it was literally like living in a parallel universe, because the last time I'd looked at it, it was still the same old shit about Gaza, and then I came back, and like the BBC headline was literally Israeli soldiers kill starving Palestinians queuing for food, and it's like there's no passive voice, no ambiguity, not Palestinians mysteriously die. You know, it was like just this is what's happened, and I think why is that changed? And now there's huge pressure on the British government to do anything, and no one can really explain. Like, people have been calling for this for ages, and the media, like atrocity after atrocity, the media have just ignored it or played it down or said, oh well, Israel's investigating. And it just really, really rapidly, last few weeks, they've completely changed their position on it. And it's almost like the Palestinian action thing that came, terrorist thing, that was like the last gasp of sort of trying to keep that narrative on this, that this was like a fringe issue and that anybody who was interested in it actually didn't care about dead babies. They just like to support terrorists or something. You know, and so, you know, you're in this bizarre position where the British government are people that are campaigning about what's going on in Gaza are being arrested as terrorists, while at the same time the British government is under tremendous pressure from its own people to do something against Israel. It's such a sort of bizarre thing. And we should talk about Keir Starmer's insane thing that he said yesterday, that his threat to recognize a Palestinian state if Israel doesn't stop starving Gazans, which I think is possibly the most stupid thing that Keir Starmer has actually ever said, which is quite something. We have less than a minute.
His threat to recognize a Palestinian state in September. A nice long run in.
Yeah, that's like one of our things. We're going to do it then. Like, it's a Donald Trump thing, isn't it? Arbitrarily.
Going to be a principled change, and we're going to do it right in some time.
Or we won't do it if you stop starving people.
If you say something different,
we're going to threaten you by this principle stand that we actually already tacitly believe should be the case anyway. It's so bizarre. Right. I feel like with this 10 minutes been going on for ages, we've still got less than a minute, Matt. Say something pithy to round us off.
Wow.
And we're back.
I really made myself laugh there. That was a brilliant joke to end that.
So what happened there? You left.
Everyone here is in uproarious laughter because of that. But unfortunately, there was a minute that was cut off from the video feed. And the hilarity that was surrounding me in this home.
Yeah, my computer just froze just as you were explaining that. So it's a sort of double level of this meta
kind of thing that happened.
Yeah, we'll see how that got recorded. Anyway, I'm so lost with this. The Epstein, I thought Epstein would be good for us, but it's so difficult for us to deal with like even very simple stories, and this is just too complicated. This should be what makes this podcast. Actually, what makes this podcast is the new party, and we should talk about that at some point. But
Your party.
yes, my party. No, it's your party, Matt. Have you signed up? Have you signed
Yeah.
up? Did you sign up to Zara's first thing?
Yeah.
Did you get anything?
Don't know. I just went to yourparty.com and put my name in.
No, but there was an initial thing that Zara did when she did that thing on Twitter, and I signed up to that. As far as I know, I didn't get any response from that. But then I get so many. My personal email is just a complete hellhole of spam. So, but I've signed up to this one as well. I still haven't received anything, but ever hopeful.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
What was
One day.
the point about Israel?
You wanted to say something about, I think, Israel and something about Peter Mandelson.
Oh, Petey, Mandy. Yeah. Um, oh yeah, so why is that position in the media changed? Why has everything changed on Israel? Don't
Oh,
know.
yeah.
Don't know. But Epstein is definitely related to
Well, I could just say that I was speaking to my friend the other day. I won't identify who she is. And she said, well, it's actually the reason that the media has changed, in her opinion. I'm not saying she's right. She said it's actually because it's the first time that it's actually really started to affect uh, the British colonial people, because it's mucking up our own democracy and our own rights and all that. Whereas when it's people who are starving or dying elsewhere, it doesn't matter as much to people. Although I'm not sure if that's right, because there've been a lot of infringements on people's rights for the past 22 months. Anyway, that was just a perspective that going against what Palestine Action was doing might have been a step too far, not just because it was an accumulation of things, but because it represented a very significant clampdown on the rights of British
well, there's the
Western.
thing about there's that theory, isn't there, about um direct action, mass protest, that you act and then the government has to act, and the government's in a tough position because if it comes out in force, that can get an even heavier reaction.
Mm,
I don't think what they've done with Palestine Action, I don't think that's the general public is really in tune with that being an outrage, because I
mm,
don't think it's really been covered.
mm,
But there's that
mm.
thing with climate protests as well, isn't there? Where there's a kind of, on the one hand, people are sympathetic, and there's this sort of balancing act between people don't like the disruption that they do, but equally they don't like to see the police carting away old women.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I think it's that the reporting has become more matter of fact, and people
mm.
don't like reading about that. I think people didn't like it from the beginning, but they felt that it was more complexity. They didn't really understand what was going on, and the horrors of
Yeah.
it were constantly being buried. Anyway, it has changed. Now, why has it changed? Because again, yeah, I don't think that just because like even if the British people had changed their tune, that wouldn't change what the media were doing. I don't think the media is responsive in that way.
Mm,
Is it? I don't know. Okay, look, well, we're going off. I mean, the point is that Jeffrey Epstein, very much linked with Mossad, very much linked with the CIA, very much linked with Israeli lobby, and um, all of these organizations have a long, rich history of espionage, of um, funneling money, which is also why Epstein it's very suspicious, but also makes a lot of sense of why he had a lot of money. Nobody knew where it came from. Um, that he was given a lot of money by people like Wexner to put into offshore accounts. In fact, all of the Cayman Islands, all of that kind of stuff, part of the reason it was set up and is maintained, despite being incredibly unpopular by all the big democratic countries who lose loads of money from it, is that it helps covert operations happen within things like the CIA, right? Because parts of the CIA want to fund things that they don't want their own government to find out, or other parts of the CIA to find out, right? Or they want to get money out of places and put it into other places. And they don't want any of this stuff to be tracked. And so this stuff is happening all of the time. And then to control that, you're either paying people off, again, through secret accounts, slush funds and whatnot, or you're blackmailing people, right? And this is just something that you either believe this is what's happening, and this is partly how the world works, or you don't. And if you believe that it is, and you look at the evidence, and that's what the conclusion you come to, someone like Jeffrey Epstein and what he's being accused of, it's not outlandish and it's not really surprising. What's interesting about it is why has he come out, and all the stuff we talked about in the first part. But a lot of people don't want to believe that this is the world that we live in. And I saw some Republican news reporter the other day saying, before this, I did not believe we lived in a world where, talking about what's happening in Gaza right now, the way that sort of a lot of people are kind of waking up to it. She said, I didn't think we lived in that world. And I'm like, that's really insane, because you're a news reporter. And this stuff does happen. And there's a naivety to it. And that kind of gets me back, right, to the very beginning of this, where I said Navarro media making money off the Israeli genocide, which partially true. But I'm very tempted to turn on the advertising thing myself and make a little bit of genocide money myself, because we're all implicated. Because neither like people are like, oh well, I'm really outraged by it. Like, I can't believe what the British government's doing. But have you actually been down to a Palestinian action protest in Parliament Square and faced getting arrested? No, you haven't. Right? No, I haven't either. It's like I am outraged by it, but I'm also in a position where I know that I don't have to do very much. It's not a great deal of risk to me. I mean, apart from doing this podcast, which could actually be quite risky in the future. But I could put myself at more risk, and I choose not to. And I think a lot of us do. And it's very difficult to know what to do, because it is, what's happening in Gaza. Well, it is a genocide. And so if you don't do everything that you can, then it's difficult to turn around and criticize other people. Apart from Keir Starmer, obviously, very easy to criticize him. Or is it? Because what can Keir Starmer do? I mean, this is the thing, right? Could Keir Starmer? Obviously, Britain could stop selling weapons and all that stuff, and I think they should. But that wouldn't stop it either. It would just isolate Britain. We wouldn't get such a good deal from Trump. We wouldn't get our 10%. Brexit's back, baby. Europe's on 15%. We're on 10%. Do you remember?
Yeah.
But I think there are complexities there. But anyway, we're getting off topic. What are we talking about? Peter Mandelson, right? So, right, this is how it is. There was an article in 2023 in the Financial Times that went through Peter Mandelson's connections with Jeffrey Epstein, and they're very weird. And it's worth mentioning that Jeffrey Epstein Peter Mandelson left politics for a while, and then when Starmer became prime minister, he came back and is now ambassador to the United States to Donald Trump. And it's just quite crazy how this guy is just so integral to the sort of New Labour project. But anyway, so Peter Mandelson, Jeffrey Epstein famously called Peter Mandelson Petey. And what's come out recently in these birthday letters is that Peter Mandelson referred to him as my best friend or my best pal. And so they were close. They until his death, they were close for like 20 years, if not more. And I'll just read you a bit from the Financial Times article. Links between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein detailed in JP Morgan Report 2023. So JP Morgan Jeffrey Epstein banked with JP Morgan, and they did an internal report to find out how
they released it publicly, deliberately.
Fucked they were. I think so, or it was leaked. I don't know. Who cares? The article begins. The extent of Jeffrey Epstein's contact with former UK Cabinet Minister Lord Peter Mandelson is laid bare in a newly released report that describes repeated meetings between the disgraced financier and politician he knew as Petey. The internal JP Morgan report from 2019, filed to a New York court on Tuesday, found that Jeffrey Epstein appears to maintain a particularly close relationship to Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, and Lord Peter Mandelson, a senior member of the British government. It suggests that in June 2009, when he was the UK business secretary, Peter Mandelson stayed at Epstein's lavish townhouse in Manhattan while the financier was in prison for soliciting prostitution, including from a minor.
Wow, that was Mandelson in 2009.
Yeah. Also in 2009, when Epstein was serving an 18-month sentence at the private wing of a Palm Beach County stockade for soliciting a young girl, Epstein wrote in an email to Jess Staley, who was like a banker at JP Morgan, but was also his private banker at some point. Anyway, he's constantly contacting this guy. He wrote, Peter, as in Peter Mandelson, will be staying at 71st, which I think is the address in Manhattan, over weekend. Do you want to organize either you or you and Jamie quietly? Up to you. Jamie, this is also quoting the Financial Times, Jamie is an apparent reference to JP Morgan chief executive Jamie Dimon. Staley replied to Epstein that he would come if he was in town, but Dimon was in Asia. So, yeah, Peter Mandelson knew Jeffrey Epstein even after he was convicted in the early noughties. He was staying at his house a lot in Manhattan and having meetings seemingly organized for him. This is a common thing that happens, is that Epstein is involved in helping people meet other people. And I think that's why he was so useful. And I think someone like Mandelson, it's really hard to think. It's naively thought it's just a really powerful guy that's good to know. Maybe don't ask questions. But yeah, I mean, anyway, this is the article goes on. It's not clear when Mandelson first met Epstein, although a report in 2002 in New York Magazine described him in attendance at an intimate dinner party at Epstein's Manhattan home alongside Trump and other figures. Last year, a photograph, this is 2023, so it's 2022. Last year, a photograph emerged of Mandelson and Epstein celebrating a birthday at Epstein's Paris apartment in January 2007. A previous photograph from 2005 showed the two men shopping together in the Caribbean. So there's two photographs of them together. One in Paris, like very intimate, the one in Paris. It's a birthday party, but they're the only two in the picture. So it's like, I don't know. And they've got a big...
Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein went shopping together in Paris.
No. There is an apartment in Paris, and there's just a waiter type of guy with a big cake, far too big for two people, and then just the two of them. I don't know. I guess someone was taking the photo.
Mandelson and Epstein with a gigantic cake in Paris.
Yeah, just celebrating Epstein's birthday. Have you not seen these photos? There's another photo. Yeah, the other photo is in the Caribbean, and it's Mandelson and Epstein again alone. I don't know who's taking the photo. Shopping, like they're wearing. I think Mandelson's wearing a weird belt thing that he's trying on. Epstein's like, yeah, it looks good, mate. Anyway, we'll quickly get through a bit more of this. They were introduced by Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of the one-time Labour MP and tycoon Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell. There we go. Another Mossad-linked, very, very suspicious individual. I mean, obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell, Robert Maxwell, Labour Party, British media, Mossad, CIA, Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, Ambassador, Keir Starmer. It just goes round and round. Sorry?
Ferrero Rocher.
Yeah. The Epstein story is really spoiling us. It's true. They were introduced by Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of Robert Maxwell. She is serving 20 years in prison for for assisting Epstein in sex trafficking underage girls. In 2014, Mandelson agreed to be a founding citizen. I don't know what that means. Maybe you know more about business, Matt, maybe? A founding citizen of the Terramar Project, a non-profit ocean conservation group founded by Ghislaine Maxwell that had financial support from Epstein. Epstein also arranged meetings between Staley, that weird banker guy, Mandelson, and Alistair Darling at Davos in 2010 when Darling was chancellor. Alistair Darling denies that they met, saying, "Why would I meet him?" And that's a really stupid thing for Darling to say, because half the people he knows that are in power in his government have all met him. So there is obviously a reason to meet him. Nothing suspicious about that, you have to admit. Mandelson's dealings with the super rich have long been his Achilles heel, forcing him into resignations on 2 occasions in the early days of his new Labour career. Yeah. So one last thing I want to say is the Financial Times article makes 2 interesting points. The emails, also these are the emails that are in this report from Epstein. The emails also offer insight into how Mandelson swapped politics for business after Labour lost the general election on May 6, 2010. It was not until November 2010 that Mandelson set up his own business, Global Counsel, which has now blossomed into an advisory firm with international reach. But his thoughts had already turned to business within days of Labour's election defeat. Yeah. So that, I mean, we always talk about the revolving door between business and politics and stuff. And someone like Peter Mandelson is obviously looking to make money, jump ship as soon as Labour are out of power, and he's forging these relationships with people like Epstein. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the problem with all this secretiveness is, I think Mandelson probably thinks, well, it's very clever. It's all secret, so nobody knows the truth. But of course, when it comes to Epstein, the fact that we don't know exactly what Mandelson's relationship with Epstein means is, I wouldn't want to speculate, but I'd just say, just think in your own heads. The most depraved, disgusting things you can imagine. Because it's secret. And Mandelson, of course, could come and tell us what it is, but I don't mind if he does or doesn't, That's the thing. Seems pretty clever to be secretive, but then at the end, actually, it's far worse because we just imagine what these relationships involved. Anyway, so that's Peter Mandelson, who's very, very unpopular with the Labour Party, very, very unpopular in the country. Inexplicably now the ambassador to Trump's America at the very time that all this Epstein stuff is going down. It's all very bizarre. The other thing I just want to mention about Epstein and Trump is I think the main thing that people are finding that's so bizarre is that when Trump came into power, there were a lot of people in his administration now and when he was previously in power that are very linked to Epstein, which would make you think, well, why the hell would he follow this, pursue this avenue? But he also brought in a lot of people who sort of made their career off looking into the Epstein stuff. So how this wasn't going to come to a head and really devastate his administration, I don't understand at all. Like, one of the bizarrest things that I saw was this thing. So do you know Howard Lutnick? He's, what is he? Trump's commerce secretary, right? So when Les Wexner got Epstein that now famous house, massive house. Some say it's the biggest house. I sound like Donald Trump. Some say it's the biggest house in Manhattan. His neighbor was Howard Lutnick. And Howard Lutnick apparently bought his part of the property from a shell company owned by Epstein and Wexner. And he is now the commerce secretary under Trump. And Trump was standing on some tarmac about to go onto Air Force One, being questioned about Epstein and why he thought it was so boring and shouldn't be investigated anymore. He was on the tarmac. He was trying to say that while next to him was Lutnick, who's directly implicated in what's going on. So it's kind of insane. I mean, the other one is, there's loads, but another one is Alexander Acosta, who was the person who
Oh, the attorney.
The attorney, and this is the most. So he's the attorney in Florida that gave this sort of sweetheart deal thing when Epstein was initially charged, where he got off very lightly, considering the crimes that he'd committed. And there was this famous Daily Beast quote. Apparently, Acosta said that he was told not to take things further because Epstein was part of intelligence or of intelligence or something. I don't know if Acosta denies that these days. But anyway, he was then in the Trump administration, in the first Trump administration, when Epstein was killed. So these people just seem to come back and forth. The other ones, of course, are who's that guy? I wrote it down because I'm so bad with names. When really early on in Epstein's career, he oh yeah, the other thing to mention about Alexander Acosta now is that he's a board member of Newsmax, a Trump supporting news organization that is heavily going with Trump's line on this. One of the few things that is. No, who's the guy who, when Epstein got his job at the Dalton School, have you heard about this link? One of his first jobs. Who's the name of the guy? Let me see if I can find it. So the guy that ran the school, Barr, Bill Barr. So he was his father ran the school that got Jeffrey Epstein his first job as a teacher, even though Jeffrey Epstein didn't even have a degree. And William Barr's father was also involved in the precursor to the CIA. He worked for, he's like so old, he was in like World War II. And his son, Bill Barr, he was the attorney general under Donald Trump at the time of Jeffrey Epstein's death. And Bill Barr also worked for the CIA earlier in his life.
Sauron.
Say again?
Bill Barr also worked for Sauron.
Sauron. Yeah. Anyway, I find it all fascinating, personally. No?
Yeah, well, it's fascinating for about 45 minutes, and it gets right on my nerves.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like it's kind of tenuous. It's like, what do you do with that information? That his father was like the guy that ran the school, 30 years ago. That it is kind of, yeah.
It gets annoying after a while. It's like you were saying, God knows how many hours ago on this podcast, that you linked it with Robert Maxwell. And as I say in the article, it's like, yeah, there is a link there, and it is really interesting. And Robert Maxwell was a fucking horrible monster, and he was the father of Ghislaine Maxwell. But he has been dead for 34 years. Before fucking Jeffrey Epstein was probably still fucking teaching in school when Robert Maxwell was found floating fucking up in the Atlantic Ocean. So the links are all intriguing, but sometimes they only take you so far. I think we're probably both coming at the conspiracy from. I think we're probably both coming to the same conclusion, but from slightly different angles. I'm a little bit worn down by conspiracies over the years because they've just got on my fucking nerves, and I've met a lot of conspiracy theorists. You're a bit more enthusiastic about it, but still going up to the limit and going, "Oh yeah."
Well, I think what's interesting now is that this stuff is spilling over into the mainstream. That's what's interesting. Partly because online media is so influential now that the narrative isn't, the mainstream has to try and sort of create their own narrative, but they also have to react to what is going on. And this Epstein stuff, it's really hard to know. You just sort of just try and follow it and see what else comes out. And as I say, you don't know who's leaking it or why. You don't know why Trump was so up for releasing the files and now isn't. It's just all, but it just doesn't.
Well, Trump often doesn't seem to have much of a play. He just wheels and deals, doesn't he? He just says whatever in his head. Yeah.
No, but he's yeah, but come on, he's very against it now, and it's really like, All right,
Yeah.
let's talk about something else that's related because everything's related to Epstein, right? So the other thing that's happened recently is that on the right, on the Trump pro-Trump, all in right wing, they've turned against Trump not only on Epstein but also on Israel,
Mm.
right? And Tucker Carlson is obviously the big one on this,
Yeah.
but there were other people, right? And there was this famously now.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, this turning points thing, right? Where
Mm.
they had this big debate about why does America fund Israel? And the
Mm.
interesting thing about that is, okay, like not even your fucking Rory Stewart's and Alistair Campbell have gone that far. In fact, the centrist position in in the UK is much more extreme, well, or less extreme. I don't know, like the far right position in the US has swung so far that they've gone past maybe Israel shouldn't starve kids to why are we funding Israel? Why does this country exist? If they can't stand on their own 2 feet, fuck off. Like they've just gone straight to that, which is
Mm.
really interesting because they didn't need to do that. Well, they didn't need to do anything. But you would think they would go, well, Israel should really think about giving some food to starving Gazans, But they're not even talking about that. They're like, we shouldn't give money to Israel. Fuck Israel. Which, and it's like that's a really crazy position. Interesting that they've taken that. And
Mm.
why what does that come out of? Why is that suddenly become the case? I mean, Tucker Carlson is just waking up to the idea that that America funds Israel and doesn't get very much out of it, or he understands that they do get a lot out of it and he just doesn't give a fuck anymore. I don't know.
That's a very interesting question, isn't it? And I guess maybe it's different for a lot of different people, but I guess there are some people who just, if they're politicos, and you're always used to having very strong opinions on the telly, and that's what you've done since you're fucking 20 years old, then, always taking strident positions, as talking heads on the news or whatever, that could partly at least explain why someone like Tucker Carlson's like it, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, you always make the sort of the big statement. I think also there's probably an element of just a lot of people just not thinking a great deal about foreign policy, and so it takes quite a long time for the penny to drop about the problems around the world. I'm sure there are political reasons as well, but I think those psychological reasons are probably quite important. You expose that, at least to someone with, who's not a psychopath, a narcissist, or a Machiavellian. If you expose to 90+% of the population, whatever political wing they're from, if you say like this, and this, then they're probably going to come to the conclusion that there's something fucking horrendous going on. It needs to be radically changed. That's one of the reasons I often say about and I notice it's starting to get a bit more currency now. The idea that every single individual in Gaza is going to be physically impacted, or has been physically impacted by this war. And hundreds of thousands of people will be inevitably killed by it, because that's the thing. When if you are someone who I don't know, I'm not sure where Tucker Carlson stood on it, but if you are someone who's on the conservative side of that debate, and you're at all reasonable, then you probably are going to be thinking, well, we kind of need to get revenge for October the 7th or something. And not very many people, and we're doing targeted killings and all this kind of thing. But it's only really when you really get a sense of what's actually happening on the ground, which I think is probably many, many times worse than those kind of moderate conservatives think. When you wake up to that, it can be quite a punch in the face. I guess just some people just
Yeah,
aren't
my
very,
concern is
it takes time for them to wake up to that because they're just a bit slow or not that.
my
Whatever it is.
concern is that Tucker Carlson particularly, he's so excitable.
And he's very excitable, yeah.
But the thing is, the way that this thing has been pushed is it's always been if you question Israel, if you're unhappy with Israel in any way, then that's because of anti-Semitism. Or at the very least, you're upsetting Jews. right? So
Yeah.
the thing is, it's like if you're protesting in central London because of what's happening in Gaza, it's like, oh, that's all very well, but you know that you're upsetting Jews, right? Jews find this scary. And people,
But I
non-Jews,
don't know. I don't know if those people necessarily always believe that very strongly. That it's just sort of like an easy thing. I'm sure there's a
yeah, but
hardcore.
you say that, but the thing, and this is the problem. This is why Israel is anti-Semitic as a country, right? Because it pushes what it does as a state. It says it does for Jewish people, and just tacitly that all Jewish people support it, or most Jewish people support it. And regardless of whether that's the case, right? The problem is that a lot of people support it, and I would say that the Jewish population probably is in line broadly with the rest of society. It's just very easy to say that Jewish people want to do this, so you shouldn't question it because you're not Jewish. Even though the person saying that isn't even Jewish, right? And it's this pushing of that Jewish people want this to happen, or Jewish people are behind this, or if you criticize this, you're upsetting Jewish people. That I think is the sort of thing that could really easily, once people just like people like Tucker Carlson, like, oh fuck Israel, actually, just be like, and fuck the Jews,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that's a really scary thing that's I think's happening
yeah.
now.
And as I'm sure many of viewers will know, I mean, there's a huge swathe of Christian fundamentalists in the United States who, part of their core part of their belief, their biblical belief, which is that we're only getting on with the with Israel so that we can so that the Christians can rise to heaven at the point of Armageddon. And so there is an inherent weakness in that relationship between Christian fundamentalists and Israeli Jews, and so they could easily turn on them. I'm not saying that that's the reason that Tucker Carlson's doing that, but that chunk of the American population that believes in angels and all this malarkey, that's kind of where they're coming from. That's what they're.
Yeah, so I think if you're a Jewish person that's like look to all these Jewish organizations that do support Israel, and you've taken sort of leadership and guidance from them, then I think you should really think about whether
Mm,
that's the right thing to do, and really if
mm.
these organizations have
Well,
your best interests at heart.
I've always said that Israel is being its own worst enemy in these kind of conflicts. I mean, it's gonna, who the hell wants to see
No, but
Israel
I
in a
want to
massive
take it the other
war?
way. I think
That could be.
no, because I don't think that because I don't think Israel represents Jewish people. I don't think you should think
No, I
about the
wasn't saying.
state.
No, I
No, I
wasn't
know
saying
you weren't. I know you weren't. But it's like but it's the thing. Like Israel's being its own worst enemy. It is, but yeah, okay, sorry. I mean, Israel's being its own worst enemy. Of course, it's doing stuff that is making it unpopular around the world, right? But that isn't that. What's bad for Jewish people in that way is that it links itself to Jewish people, and so much of the
Mm,
media and other governments, people like Keir Starmer, love to uh, believe that line, sort of promote that point of view. Like you would never promote that point of view for any other country because you
mm,
say, well, there's lots of Muslim countries, well, that's the thing. There are lots.
mm.
So
Yeah.
when Iran does something or Russia does something, you don't say, well, that's, the Christians are doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, when Pakistan does something, we don't say, "Oh, that's in the name of Islam or whatever."
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
the
don't question
Muslims
what
are doing.
Pakistan's doing because you'll upset all the Muslims here. It's like, no, you might upset some, but
Mm.
that's, but because it's the only Jewish state. What I'm saying is we need more Jewish states. That's the solution.
Yeah, I'm glad that you finally solved the Middle East crisis, Daniel,
We need
by
a two-state
introducing
solution, both of them
both of
Jewish.
them being Jewish. Now that is an excellent place on which to end
It
this.
is. We've still got 5 minutes of the last 40 left, Matt. So
Do
let's just quick
comments.
comment. Oh fuck, I haven't got them up. Right, we're gonna do so many comments next week because we haven't done them. It's just such a backlog, and I would like to get through a lot of them. But let's talk about the new party,
Oh yeah.
because it is quite exciting. Or let's talk about 28 Days Later, which you hated. I actually didn't like it either, but I
Did
did
you?
want to. Not
You
really.
just wanted me. You wanted to make me go to the cinema
No,
and
I
have a
thought it was
shit time.
interesting because of what happens at the end.
Oh yeah. Could we ruin it for all the truckers out there?
Uh, no, we can just say,
People can close their ears.
well, we don't have to mention exactly what happens. Can we talk about it without mentioning?
It sets up another thing in the series that relates a lot to Jimmy Savile. Is that what you were going to refer to?
Yeah.
And is kind of and might be and it's quite an intriguing premise, I suppose. But it's not that. I don't know. It seemed all right.
No, okay. Well, let's talk about the new next time. We'll talk about the new party. We'll do comments. That's probably
Yeah.
all we need to do next time. The thing about Jimmy Savile, okay, what's interesting about it is, well, what is the logic there, right? Because I read or I watched a video online, and at first I thought, oh, okay, just first my own naive viewing of it. So, oh, these guys have like decided to worship evil, and they're
Mm,
going after Jimmy, and the Jimmy Savile is their guy. But then, of
mm.
course, the rest of the film, you know, takes a great amount of pain to show you that this is an alternative past. Time stopped in 2022 whenever the first outbreak happened.
Yeah.
All the stuff about Jimmy Savile would not have come out.
2022 is that when
No,
the
sorry,
time
2002, whenever it is.
2002,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So you've got
Yeah.
all like the stuff about like Happy Eater and
Oh
like,
yeah, that's really intriguing actually.
right,
Yeah. I was
right.
thinking it was more just these are different expressions of British culture which Danny Boyle is bringing
Yeah.
out in an intriguing way. But you're right, if it actually begins in 2002 and there's a whole different timeline from then, that really makes the next episode will be
Yeah,
interesting.
so it is interesting. Like, what is the narrative of Jimmy Savile in this? Because the other thing, so I think what they then found online was people had thought about a bit more, and they thought, okay, so maybe Jimmy Savile is just like a beloved BBC, like he kind of was before things came out, and so that's why this gang have opted to. But that doesn't make a great deal of sense because people of that age range wouldn't really care about Jimmy Savile. And in fact, it kind of shows you when they're watching Teletubbies at the beginning that they're
Mm.
not, that's their thing, right? Not Jimmy Savile. They're into Teletubbies. I feel like we probably should have explained a little bit more about what the fuck happens in this film. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's too late. If you haven't seen it, then whatever,
It's not
right?
enough
So
time, 40 minutes, but
we've got
nonsense.
1 minute,
20
50 seconds. Got a
It's
minute.
quite
Okay,
good.
so this is my extra bit. So not everybody in Britain died in the zombie attack. Not everybody was in Britain. People were abroad, people were all over the place, people fled, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, what happens to those people and what information about the dark truths within Britain that were being housed that would come out in the next decade did these people take out of Britain and explain to some, so yeah, I just found that that whole last few minutes, I didn't think the film was that great, but the last few minutes just were completely insane to me. And I've just like got me, and I just went on like a YouTube binge to try and understand what was going on. The other thing I thought was interesting, right, is that they used Young Fathers as the music.
Oh,
And we also were going to talk about Shifty, the new Adam Curtis thing. Now
oh yes.
that begins with a clip of Jimmy Savile, and then the opening music for each episode is Young Fathers. And I would say that Shifty actually, and the 28 years later, there's something really interesting in the way that they're like two peas in a pod, whatever.
Mm.
We've got less than a minute, which is quite good because it sounds like I've got a lot more to say that's really interesting, but that's probably literally it. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Peace out, brothers and sisters.
Wait, still not finished.
And any minute. I wonder who's still listening.
Well, you could say something about 28 years later if you want.
Like the Trilateral Commission.